Hi, I am Michael Allison, the developer of the Play Zone, which is a unique application of polyvagal theory specifically to health and wellness and performance. And what I wanted to share today was a little bit about my own experience, and particularly when I gave a talk recently at the Polyvagal Institute annual summit, their event. And it was the first time that I had ever presented to 200 smiling faces in front of me. And the experience that I had was beyond what I could have ever anticipated. And it actually helped me peel away a label that I had lived beneath since I can remember. When I was a little kid, I wouldn't answer the telephone. I was afraid of what voice might be on the other end. And as I grew up, I hid behind this label of shyness. And when I was in junior high, I had practiced and spent a lot of time learning to break dance and pop. And I was actually pretty good. And in junior high, there were many school dances where all of the kids would get in a little circle and basically do their thing. And I would never jump in because I was afraid of what others might think. And again, I hid behind my own label of shyness. And then later on in high school, I was actually valedictorian. I was number one in my high school class. And with that came the honor of speaking at graduation, which I was too afraid to do, and I didn't do it. And looking back now, more than 30 years later, I understand completely what was going on in my body, in my physiology. And that label of shyness is just a label. And what it really meant is in those experiences, in those environments, in those situations, my body, for whatever reason, was reacting in a threat physiology. And I was mobilized. And that mobilized energy was labeled as anxiety or shyness or fear or worry or panic, or all coming from a place of, will I be good enough? Will I be accepted by my peers? Will I be enough? Can I belong? And that was the theme of my presentation, was this shared story, this enduring quest of belonging here, of feeling safe in our body and feeling safe and connected with another, feeling safe in proximity to others, to become part of something, in essence, to belong here, to belong with you, to belong in my body, no matter how it's feeling. And so leading up to that talk, which again, I had never done before, I hadn't presented, I hadn't been on that type of stage, and I hadn't even given this specific talk ever before. And so the day before, I had to go up and do what's called a sound check and a run through real quick to make sure that my slide deck was working properly, to make sure I just had a sense of how the mic was going to be. Do I want to be sitting? Do I want to be standing? Kind of all of these logistics of making a presentation, which again, I'd never done. And so the night before my talk, they call me in for my sound check, my tech check. And when I go up there was a lot of chaos. There were guys running around. They were still scrambling to get set up. There were these bright lights. I'm up on this stage. There's 200 empty chairs and people just milling around. A lot of chaos, which I understand, right, is uncertainty to my physiology, to my nervous system. And these bright lights didn't help. And I had a moment. I stood up there and I'm looking out at these empty chairs, cue of danger, and my body started responding. I started mobilizing. I started to remember the shyness that I had throughout my life. And standing up there, I had this quick thought come in of, can I pull this off? Can I do this? Is this possible? And then I went back into my body, what my body was feeling. And at one point, my legs were even quivering. My heart was beating very quickly. I controlled my breathing, but yet my heart was racing and my legs were actually moving. They wanted to move. I wanted to run. I literally wanted to run off that empty stage. But I didn't. I stood there and I just sort of allowed myself to be in that place and to be in that mobilized body. And stories would come up. All of a sudden I'd have a thought of, who do you think you are? You're applying polyvagal theory to performance. And now you need to perform. So you need to pull this off, or what your application is bogus. Of course I have those thoughts, but I didn't go there. I just kept coming back to letting my body feel mobilized, letting my body feel uncomfortable, meeting my body where it was, however it was. And it was, trust me, it was uncomfortable. It did not feel good. And it was real easy to keep going back to the doubt and the worry, but I didn't. I kept going back into the body when that would happen. And so I walk off stage. I say to my new friend who I just met at this conference, and I'm like, whew, I just had a visceral response. And he's like, wow, okay, well, what are you going to do about it? I didn't really have an answer, but that was his response. What are you going to do about it? And we go to dinner, and a whole bunch of us. And so I kind of let everything go. I just sort of engaged in the dinner, but I was a little bit distracted, kind of coming back to thinking at times, wow, how's my body going to respond tomorrow? What's going to happen? Is my body going to mobilize like that? Am I going to start shaking and quivering? And if that happens, what might I do? Dinner's over. I go back to the hotel room and I'm by myself. And I'm lying down, gonna go to sleep early because the talk is the next day. And for the next couple of hours, I'd have these waves of just mobilized energy moving through me. All of a sudden, my heart would start beating more quickly. And my body at some point would even little tiny shakes, not big shakes, but just mobilized energy moving through me. And these would come and go. And what I really focused on was just allowing those waves of energy, that mobilized state, to just go. And I did as best as I could not to attach any stories, not to attach any meaning other than, oh, my body's mobilizing. Of course, tomorrow is very uncertain. It's unpredictable. It's really important to me. These are peers and people that I value and admire and deeply respect. Steve Porges sitting there in front of me, someone I've studied his work. I'm taking his work and applying it. It would have been very easy to keep going on to all of these stories attached to what my body was feeling. But I did a pretty good job of not. I just kept coming back into meeting my body, respecting what it was doing, and letting these waves come and go. And they didn't last very long. They would come and go throughout the night. And at one point, I had a reflection. And I remembered I was a very good baseball pitcher when I was a kid. And in high school, we were playing the championship team, the team that ended up winning states in Pennsylvania at some point. And I was the pitcher, and everyone knew I would be pitching. And anyway, long story short, I actually pitched a really good game. And I struck out 13 batters. I gave up one walk, no runs, and we won 1-0. That team ended up winning states not too long thereafter. So big deal. And I played and pitched very, very well. But I remember my father criticizing me for the walk, criticizing me for a couple of pitches that he didn't think were the right pitches to make, and that I got out of some jams by luck. And I remember that feeling of no matter what I did in that moment, it wasn't good enough. And here I was, about ready to give a public talk to someone I really respect and admire. And I had that, oh, am I good enough? Maybe I'm not good enough. Or no matter what I do, will it not be good enough? And that was my reflection. It was pretty powerful. And then it sort of let everything go. And I realized, it's not about being good enough. It's about showing up authentically, being accessible, being vulnerable. Because in reality, I've practiced enough to feel safe. That's it. And so the waves dissipated. And when I woke up in the next morning, I was still a little bit more mobilized. I definitely felt my heart was a little faster than normal. Breathing was under control. Muscle tension seemed okay, but I was a little bit amped up, not much. So what I did is I just didn't drink coffee. I had an herbal tea. I didn't want to add more fuel to the fire. And then I did a little jumping rope. I went and swam in the ocean. And I actually really grounded. I did a couple series of breathing exercises, and I just came into my body. My body was relaxed. My body had let all that move through. And I had separated from that association of not being good enough, of no matter what I did, not being good enough, and letting that go. And it was a real game-changing moment for me. And as I sat there in preparation before my talk, my friend Heather was giving her talk. And what I thought I would probably be like in that moment, I thought I'd probably be listening to Heather, but not really listening to Heather and really thinking about what I was going to present and how I was going to be. But you know what? That wasn't how I was. I was actually fully engaged in her amazing and also honest and authentic talk. And I felt a sense of gratitude and a sense of connection for knowing her, for being in this environment, and for the opportunity that I was about to have. And so there was no fear, there was no worry, there was no judgment or criticism or even a sense of what if. Instead, I went onto that stage authentically open and accessible, partly because of not attaching stories to how my body was processing everything, how my body was reacting to things. And then even equally important, by connecting to Heather, to everyone else that was there, and coming into that common quest of what I even was about to talk about, that ongoing, lifelong journey to feel safe. And especially to feel safe with others and tapping into that common core of humanity. And it changed everything. So I just wanted to share that because I think that we can relate to. We might all have our own stepping on the stage experience. And we might be hiding behind labels, consciously or subconsciously. And in reality, those labels are just false beliefs or things to make sense of bodily reactions, and we didn't know how to respond differently, right? We did what we could, but those labels are holding us back. And if we can just start to peel a little bit of the label off and look beneath, we will find our authentic self. And we'll realize it's always been there because it's authentic, right? And so thank you for listening to my experience of peeling one big label off, the label of shyness, the label of I'm not going to be good enough. It's not enough. Because we all have those. And it's time that we help each other to begin to look beneath the label of what we all have and share in common. This quest to feel safe and to ultimately to belong here and to belong with each other, to belong in this body. Thank you.